Good morning. I'm Ron Curry, the CEO of IGEA, and welcome this morning. As we start GCAP 23, we're going to have a welcome to country by Uncle Tony. I do have a long bio here for Tony I was going to read out, and I was checking it with him, and he goes, yeah, no, mate. Just tell him I'm Uncle Tony, I'm a proud Wurundjeri man, and I'll do the rest. So, Uncle Tony, it's your turn to do the rest.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and thank you all for inviting me here today, and that round of applause was really good. Thank you very much. I'd like to start off with saying Wurundjeri to everyone. Wurundjeri in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means welcome. So welcome to all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here today. I'd also just like to say I'm very proud and honoured to be standing tall for my people once again, like I have done for 35 years and will continue to do so for the rights of their country. I call our people the forgotten people of their own lands. My great-grandfather was the last Nurungita. Nurungita in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means last head tribesman living on the land out at Corandurk on Hillsville, leading the mob on the mission where I live today. He took over from my uncle. My great-uncle was King Barak. King Barak was our fearless leader that took on the government in the 1800s, right up till 1903 when he passed. My great-grandfather took over from there and led our mob for another 20 years, from 1903 till 1923, when the mission was closed due to colonisation and being forced out into white society. The Wurundjeri people, they are also a part of the Kulin Nation, so Kulin means man. In the Kulin Nation, we had the 5 language groups. We had the Wadawurrung to the west, the Coorong, who were the westerly neighbours to the Wadawurrung, Tanarong to the northeast, Bunurong to the southwest, and the Wurrung of the Wurundjeri territory that we stand on here today. The Wurundjeri lies of inner cities of Melbourne extend from the mountains of the Great Dividing Range, south of the Yarra River to the Mordialloc Creek, west to the Werribee River, and east to Mount Baw. The Wurundjeri people, they have a social totem. It is Bunjil the eagle. Bunjil represents spiritual powers throughout many parts of Australia. Bunjil taught all the laws about life, behaviour and ceremonies to make sure that our culture would continue for all walks of life throughout Australia. So Bunjil was referred to as the creator of mankind. Bunjil created great people from the land. That is why we call the land our mother, or the mother of creation. Never can the land be taken away. The land will always belong to Aboriginal people, as we are part of the land and the land is part of us. Our story is similar to the European people. Theirs is by their chosen faith, ours is by the dream time. We both have creators and beliefs, and ours is Bunjil. It is a traditional custom of the Australian Aboriginal communities to be asked and to give permission for people to enter their lands. And today you have now joined with me to honour the spirits of my ancestors, past, present and merging, who have nurtured these lands for over 60,000 years. And we, as the owners of the lands, offer our heartily welcome to the lands and hope that together as citizens of this beautiful country, we can build, develop and unite stronger nations for all peoples. I'll close in the Wurrung language, which is Wurundjeri, Wandun, Wurundjeri, Balak, Yemen, Kumbibik, which means you're most welcome to the land of the Wurundjeri people. Just before I get jumped down, I'd just like to touch on a very important time for Indigenous people in this country right at this minute. As you know, we've struggled to be recognised as the owners of the lands due to greed by the government. So we need the support of the European public to get on board with the yes vote, get us over the line. It's been, European settlement in this country has been 280 years with no recognition of the real owners of the lands, which I find a total disgrace. So get on board, support us with the voice, and and we're also the oldest living culture in the world with no treaty in its own country too. So you might want to think about that when you make your vote. But thank you very much, and get behind us. Woohoo!
Thanks, Uncle Tony. Usually about here I'd be welcoming the Minister to open GCAP, but Dan Andrews sort of mixed that up for us this year. So we're not sure if we have a Minister, but if we did, he or she would be here welcoming everybody. This year's focus for GCAP 2023 is Empower. And Empower is achieving the vision of ourselves, our teams and our art in technical skills and any other way that we can grow as developers, as businesses, and as people. This year is our actually it's our fourth GCAP. We've done 2 online. This is our second in person, so we're quite excited. I'm going to try to kind of mix it up this year and try to do a few new things. And Sav will talk about that in just a little while. The underlying theme is empower, but what we try to do at IGEA, we run with 4 pillars, and that's to create, to advocate, to educate, and to celebrate. And GCAP 2023 is definitely designed around creating, and that's creating connections. So we do have an icebreaker this morning, not long after this. Again, I'm not going to steal too much of Sav's thunder, but we'd love to invite you to do all that. The other part of our policy underlying is to educate. So I'm sure you'll see that we've got a jam-packed content scheduled over the next few days. Advocate is another one of those pillars, and we're really delighted to have a huge representative cohort from the government with us over the next 3 days. So welcome and thank you to them who've come along. And of course, celebrate is a big thing. So of course, we have the AGDAs on Wednesday night, and we're hoping all of you can join us for that. So this is a beautiful venue, and we certainly couldn't bring this to you without the thanks of our sponsors. So please bear with me for a moment as I thank each one: Ultimate Studio and Supercell, Sledgehammer, Playside Studios, Unreal Epic Games, EA Fire Monkeys, Vic Screen, Amazon Web Services, League of Geeks, Code NZ, LGB, City of Port Phillip, Gameloft, Aya Jaharan, SA Film Corporation, Screen Queensland, Superglue, Screen West, Creative Vic, I'm nearly done, Hipster Whale, Screen Australia, Big Ant Studios, Cam Rogers Legal, Unity, Leonardo AI, Vercel, Exola, Two Moos, Screen New South Wales, and Google. As you can see, there's a whole lot of sponsors there, and each one of them we thank for putting their faith in us for delivering a great 3-day event here. So probably the biggest highlight of GCAP over the years is Sav's housekeeping. So it's generally terrifies me because I'm never quite sure what he's going to say. But what I'd like to do is invite Sav to the stage to give his housekeeping.
He always talks me up way too much. I'm never that actually funny. Good morning, everybody, and thank you to Ron for the introduction. If you haven't met me before, I'm Sav Wolfe, Manager of Events, Content and Diversity, Equality and Inclusion for IGEA. That does not fit nicely onto a business card, so don't ask me for one. I am also the Event Coordinator and the Content Manager for GCAP. This is actually the 5th GCAP that I worked on. I came with the program when IGEA took it over, so they've had to deal with me. I've done 3 in person and 2 digital, and extremely slowly, if you look at all of the photos of me at previous GCAPs, you can see I've slowly grown a beard. I'm hoping next year I'll have a mustache. Keep it on lock, you know, check it out next year. GCAP has an extremely special place in my heart and my timetable, and each year it is our mission to meet the industry where it needs us, so I hope you get everything you need and more out of this year. There is a quick roundup of some changes and the shape of this year's GCAP for you all. As Ron mentioned, we've prepared a networking social icebreaker to go with your morning tea, a little something to start those conversations up and get the ball rolling for you. We also have the Ultimate Social on tomorrow evening, a new event added to our schedule that offers you a low-key networking event. It is fully non-alcoholic and we will have delicious desserts for you to enjoy. On Wednesday, we've got a new track this year called the Highlights track, which brings you information that is useful across the entire games industry and is sure to leave you all feeling very inspired. We've also had significant interest in the past few years in solidifying a workshop system, and this year we've brought you some amazing workshops on Wednesday to enjoy. Please note that these are limited spaces, so you must book your workshops via the Schedge app, not Meet to Match. So get your bookings in before lunchtime tomorrow, as that's when we'll finalize them. The local lounge is back again this year with an amazing number of Screen Australia funded games for you to try, and is very neatly located right next to our free coffee cart. Sponsor booths have also made a return after such a success last year, so swing by and see what's on offer there. I could really start rambling here, and I already have, and tell you about all the amazing talks we have, the talented speakers, and more. But as Ron said, if you've been to a few GCAPs, you know that I'm also here to talk to you about an event manager's favorite topic, which is housekeeping. To cover off some important points first, in an emergency, please notify an IGEA team member immediately, be that a medical, fire, or other kind of emergency, and we will escalate accordingly. In the event of an emergency, one of two alarms will sound. If it is just a beeping, that's an alert, so please remain calm and await further instructions from MCEC. And if it's a whoop whoop, that is the sign to evacuate immediately. MCEC wardens will direct you to the safest evacuation point and let you know when it is safe to return. If an IGEA team member is not available immediately, please contact one of our many volunteers who you'll spot in the blue GCAP shirts, and they can get in contact with us straight away. If you're feeling at all unwell in any way, please do not remain at GCAP. In case of illness, we do have a refund policy found on our website, and we can assist you to ensure that you don't miss out. We are also providing masks and hand sanitizers once again, so those can be accessed at the Rego desk for free. There are a lot of you here, so if you can't socially distance effectively, masks are a great way to assist in keeping your fellow attendees comfortable. And it's a big MIGWA this year, so try and stay well throughout the entire event. I've been having my Barocca every morning. I say it every year, but when you signed up via Eventbrite, you agreed to our privacy policy and code of conduct, and I wonder how many of you can quote me on this directly this year. We printed the code of conduct QR code on the back of your badges so you can always have it handy to know what our expected behaviour is. Please ensure that you're familiar with it, as it is a requirement that you abide by our code of conduct, and we have a strict zero tolerance policy for issues of bullying and harassment. GCAP is a business-to-business conference, which means we are expecting you to act as if you were at work in a business. For all code of conduct violations, myself and Raylene, who you will see around the conference as well, are the main points of contact. If you witness any unacceptable behaviour, a dangerous situation, or a person in distress, you can tell either Raylene or myself via our numbers on the website. You can contact a volunteer to come get us, or grab us directly if we're within eyesight. Whatever method you're most comfortable with, and we'll be along to address it ASAP. If you do have any general questions, myself, Raylene, and the IGEA team will be floating around during the conference, so please feel free to get in contact with us if you need us for any reason at all. We're also very happy just to talk with you. Welcome back to GCAP, and thank you for indulging me of another year of housekeeping. Now, I would love to introduce our opening keynote. When I first met this keynote, I was extremely starstruck. Here was somebody who had touched on every aspect of games narrative, from technical writing, localization, voiceover, narrative design, and much, much more. Talking to her did not do anything to alleviate the starstruck nature, as I learned so much more in an hour-long phone call about the ins and outs of moving through a career in games, jumping between teams, and managing inclusion of a variety of viewpoints. She is currently a lead narrative designer at Crystal Dynamics with over a decade of experience. She has worked for industry behemoths like Riot Games, BioWare, Blizzard, and Aniplex. Her polymathic which is a fun word to say, experience of games narrative led her to a philosophy and system that values inclusion and different perspectives, even if they do not align with hers. Here to talk to you today about her journey through the games industry and how connections strengthen and empower us all, please welcome to the stage, Diandra Lasrado.
I'm going to ask y'all to give me a minute because I will need water during this presentation. So I'd actually like to begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to all Indigenous people here today. As mentioned, my name is Diandra Ann Lasrado, and I am lead narrative designer at Crystal Dynamics. And I definitely want to thank each and every one of you that showed up so early to see this talk, which is about how connection empowers us all and my personal narrative journey. And before I begin into all that, I would really like to acknowledge two very important connections that helped me get here. Mr. Liam Esler and Sav Wolfe. Liam has been a longtime friend and supporter of me, and he's actually the one that suggested to Sav that I do this talk. And Sav listened with an empathetic ear and heard my journey and thought that it'd be worthy of you, my peers. And I am forever grateful to the both of them for their faith in me. And I'm gonna be honest, this is my first time doing a keynote. So I'm a little bit nervous. I may mess up, but I ask you for your patience and understanding. And when it came to this keynote, I really spun around in my head about what to say. But I realized that each point in my journey is a lesson that I learned. And that though those lessons may seem basic, they really are important. And truly, the longer that I am in my career, the more I feel like going back to basics is the most useful, even if it's a reminder. So, since we're talking about my journey, here are some of the places that I've worked at that will come up. Sav mentioned some of them. And I do want your open hearts and minds because I'd like to take you through my time in games in a slightly different way. I would like to present my journey through games by the major arcana of tarot. Yep, before you walk out, hear me out. The practice of tarot has been one of the most helpful things in helping me hone my storytelling skills. To me, tarot is a shared experience between myself and whomever I'm reading for. And so I'm going to give you all the spiel that I give to anyone that I pull cards for. And that is, nothing of what I say will be fatalistic. You are the master of your own journey, always. I want you to think about this like a Rorschach test, and that everyone will see something different and take something different away. That is at least what I hope this talk accomplishes for you. So, where do we start? The beginning, of course, with the cards all locked up tight in their box inside me, but they hold the potential for greatness. I'll be honest and say I did not start in games. I started in the library. And I honestly thought that the greatest thing that I would ever achieve is working in my hometown library in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada. I couldn't imagine anything else. Quite obviously, life had a slightly different plan for me. But I truly value the time that I got to spend in my little library. It was a very blessed experience. I want you to imagine that library is a female-dominated industry that is honestly full of badass ladies who all had prior jobs that were awesome. I worked with lawyers, doctors, nurses. It was a vibrant spectrum of people. And it showed me that though you started in one place, you can choose to do something different. It also set me up with an amazing support system and gave me the appreciation for that support. This has helped inform my career to this day, looking for that kind of support. And don't get me wrong, I loved the library deeply. I loved it so much, I was there for 10 years. But, like I said before, there was a box of potential inside me, and that really needed to be addressed. And eventually, I decided to open it. And so, we have our first card in the major arcana, the Fool, which symbolizes a great venture into the unknown. Even though I wasn't in games, I did love playing games. I even met a gentleman playing a game called City of Heroes. And we actually met in person. We fell in love, and I thought that it would be years before we could be together, because he was American and I was Canadian. But fortune favors the bold. He got a job in Southwest Asia and said that I could come with him. And when he presented this to me, my instant reaction was to be incredibly nervous and torn. I wasn't sure if I should do it. However, like I mentioned, I had some really strong, awesome women that I worked with. And one of them, Julia, who has a great life journey of her own, she's the one that I went to first to see what I should do. And I had a very prepared speech. I talked about how it would be irresponsible to leave this job, how it would be irresponsible to leave my schooling, and that there's all these dangers, and I had it perfectly prepared. And she didn't even let me finish. I got through maybe the first sentence. And she told me, don't even think about it. Just go. At the library will always be here. And so I left. I left everything I knew in the world to go to Southwest Asia and be with my boyfriend of 4 months. It definitely taught me my very first lesson that I have carried forward through everything, which is opportunity. Now, how does this apply to game dev? I will say that whatever comes across your plate, you should always take the opportunity. There are so many presented to us in all ways everywhere. And if we look for them, we can take them. Conversely, we should always give opportunity. We tend to look for the same things in games when we're looking for new hires or vendors or anything, but truly we should look for what makes somebody stand out and what makes them different. And we should relish those differences because honestly, those bring us new perspective. Now, being abroad was a wild adventure, but it was only 6 months. We moved back to the States and wanted to be together, but again, boyfriend of 4 months, maybe 10 now? It's a touch too early to get married. So he went and found a job in Canada at BioWare. And when we moved to Edmonton, I was still set on the path to be in library. I even applied at the University of Alberta and got a job offer in hand. I really, really didn't think that working in games was something that I could do. However, opportunity came for me, and BioWare also needed an editor that knew how to do documentation. And who better to do documentation than a librarian? So at this point, I had to choose between BioWare and that was a maybe or a for sure offer in hand from University of Alberta. Quite obviously, I took the leap of faith for BioWare, and thankfully, it very much worked out. And I was able to draw the next card in my journey. The Magician. The Magician symbolizes having all the tools necessary for the journey at hand. Which was great, because my first job in games was very different from everything I had done before. Now, I was thrust into a male-dominated industry, which had very different vibes from the female-dominated industry from which I had come before. One of the greatest things it did teach me was to cherish those who were different like me. And I did meet some really amazing people there, like Crystal Entz, Cookie Haponia, Karen Weeks, Christina Norman, and Corey May. BioWare was also my first job in games and taught me the base of how a game was made, which at that point was a huge mystery to me. But coming from somewhere different, I was also able to see how the skills I had from library could fit in and make things better for games. And it really put a point on the fact that having different tools than everybody else, A, helped me get the job in the first place, but B, also made my workplace better. And so the great lesson that I learned from my time at BioWare is all your tools are useful, even if they don't seem game specific. Every job you have can be useful. There's always something you can take from previous experience, even if it isn't in games. And you can always apply it somehow. Truly, I feel like this is exemplified in the next card I draw, but I'm getting a touch ahead of myself. At this point, I was still at BioWare, and it was absolutely fantastic, but they had an 11% layoff at EA, and I was a contractor. So I got let go, and I needed to find something new. And I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I took a little adventure out with my friends, and we went to a strip club. Didn't expect that one, right? And while I was there, I was approached by one of the dancers' mothers. She came up to me very directly and said, "Hey, you should be on that stage." And I was a little shocked. Yeah, it was quite the moment. She was so adamant, "You should be up on that stage, you should perform, you'll be great at this." She even introduced me to her daughter working there, who also really sold me on the idea. And I had to hearken back to my first lesson, which is opportunity, right? Also, side note, you are only 26 once, so take advantage of it. And that's where I drew the next card in my journey, the Empress, who symbolizes empathy and communication. I'm gonna say that being a stripper was one of the best, most learning adventures I have ever had, and quite honestly taught me more about how to be a good game dev than any of my actual jobs in games. Canada and the US can be a little prudish when it comes to things like this. And there is definitely a stigma about people who danced and were strippers, but also those who went into the club. And it really seemed like the same stigma that was applied many years ago to people who played games. And I was able to take that and learn some things and make some connections to how that could go back and help me in my game dev journey. Being a stripper showed me a lot of very interesting things. Most of the people that came into the club were not there for sex. They came in to have someone see them for who they are. Truly, they all had different needs and wants, and this is very like all the players in our games. Being a stripper taught me how to read the tea leaves on those desires almost instantly and kind of tap into what would be best for that want. It taught me how to listen with an empathetic ear to anybody's plight, and it also taught me how to communicate boundaries, but also, more importantly, how to sell fantasy. And what is games but selling someone a fantasy? I still, to this day, use many of the lessons that I learned while being a stripper. And so, the big overall one that I will give to you for today is everyone deserves empathy. If we take the time to listen, we will always find value in what we hear. And I mean, this applies to our fans in a very major way. Even when they're obnoxious, they still deserve to be listened to. However, I am definitely not saying take abuse, because we all know that they can get a little salty from time to time. It's definitely up to them to try and be tactful as well. So I was only a dancer for a very short time, because though my partner still had his job at BioWare, and we both dearly, dearly loved the company, Edmonton sucks. Definitely. I still haven't gone back. So he was looking around for a new job while I danced, and he was looking around back in the States, and he found something that he wanted to apply for. And this is kind of how the conversation went. It's very romantic. He told me that if he got the job that he was applying for, he would take it. And I said, yes. Then he said, if that happens, that means we must move back to California. And I said, yes. And then he said, if we do that, we need to get married. And I said, I choose you, Pikachu. And so we went back to California. And I had some downtime. We did get married. And I had some good downtime while I was waiting for my green card. And that led me to draw the next card in my journey, the Hierophant. Now, the Hierophant symbolizes traditions, but also learning. I think that we all get a little anxious at the quiet periods in our lives, but truly, even time off can be an opportunity. Having the space to assess and see what else you need in your life can yield amazing results. I realized I knew about the creative side of things, but perhaps I could use more expertise into the mechanical. So I took my time off and I got a tech writing certificate. And tech writing truly taught me to look at the structure of writing and narrative and how to mechanically deliver information. And I'm going to be honest, all of those very crunchy mechanical parts, they've helped me with my creative writing much more than I would have originally thought. I also used this time off to go to different game dev meetups and learn from all the new and interesting people there, some of which will be part of this story at a later point. Now, my greatest learning that I got from this time off was always be learning. There's a lot of times where if we've done something for a while, we may assume that we have mastery over it. But that is actually false. There is always going to be someone that is bright-eyed and new and bushy-tailed who will have a fresh eye and who will come in with new ideas to the thing that we've been doing forever. And truly, it behooves us to keep up with them and challenge ourselves to learn and become better in whatever it is that we do. Now, after about 2 years and finally getting my green card, I needed work. And in comes a connection, Ms. Christina Norman from BioWare, who had recently moved down and gotten a job at Riot Games, and who also needed an editor that she could trust. And so I pulled the next card in my journey, the Chariot. The Chariot symbolizes progress forward and hard work, but it's also about crossing global boundaries. Now, I had to jump through some hoops for Riot Games. I had to, and this was mandatory, get to level 15 in League of Legends. I was not a MOBA player. This was an adventure. I also had to go through a slew of interviews. And this was also Riot Games in 2012. So we have all read the articles And I'm not going to linger on any of that. I will instead focus on the good. BioWare was truly an intro to games, but in a lot of ways, Riot was a masterclass. I got to see how large-scale game production worked. And truly, Riot is always moving and progressing like the chariot. I learned about things on a global scale, and it was really my first time where I got to touch partner teams like localization and see for myself how important, crucial even, they are to game development. The localization manager at the time, FX, is someone who I am eternally grateful for in his patience in explaining how that team worked and how my team affected him. Working at Riot helped me broaden my understanding of how to better help downstream teams. And it also showed me that games are bigger than you can ever imagine. And I will say we sometimes forget that when we stick to just our discipline. And so my great learning from Riot Games was, think globally. When we broaden our perspectives to frame things in terms of thinking of others worldwide, we find ways to adapt our narratives and games for the better. Now, Riot was only a 6-month contract, though truly it felt like 6 years in some ways. We fit a lot of things into that time. I learned how to work with many partner teams. I helped launch a bunch of heroes. I helped out with VO scripts, and it was a lot. But thankfully, I wasn't out of work for too long because a connection from that game dev meetup came through for me. Ms. Michelle Rotka, she worked at a company called Snail Games, and she gave me my next job there as editor. Now, Snail is a Chinese company who was trying to release their game, Age of Wushu, into the North American market. This was, even though I had worked at Riot Games, which was mostly owned by Tencent at the time, this was my first time working for a truly foreign company and seeing about global learning from a different perspective. And so I pulled my next card in my major arcana journey. Strength. Now, strength symbolizes a strength of character needed to persevere, but truly it's more than that. The truly strong question their experiences to see if those experiences hold up. Seeing a game rough translated from Chinese was an absolute trip. However, I had great guides like Albert Cow who helped me learn and gave me perspective and insight into the culture. A lot of times being there made me question the way I had learned how to do things at my job currently. And I believe that there is a lot of learning to be had in how people do things differently and what differences they value. Snail also taught me about telling a story that is true to the original, but also resonant for people in a different place. And it got me thinking hard about all of that. And I think of all the learnings, probably opportunity might be the top, but I think this is the second in terms of scale and what I think about the most. And that is it bad or isn't different? I think that this is one of the most important questions we can ask about narratives or games on a whole. Usually, when we are faced with something we are not familiar with, our gut reaction is that they're bad. But that usually isn't the case, honestly. A lot of times, it's just different. And when you start to look at your game and you start to look at the stories that you're telling, recognizing the difference between the two will bring you a whole new perspective and let you build a better story with a far more open heart. Now, the industry being what it is, my time at Snail came to an end when they had layoffs. And I looked around and I saw a job posted for a localization editor at Xseed Games. Now, at the time, I had done technical editing and marketing and copy editing and creative editing, and this seemed like a great new opportunity to go deeper into another form. And so I drew the next card in my journey, the Hermit, which symbolizes inward reflection, but also listening to and searching for meanings in the quiet. It was only a short 3-month stint at Xseed, but it was still very important to my game development journey. The studio showed me what small-scale success looked like, and they were a tiny team who did sales that at a AAA company would mean office closure. They brought in games from Japan to localize into the North American market, and they catered to niche. And that let me learn about what niche markets are and really dive into and see the absolute love and devotion audiences have for those niche games. It taught me about listening to smaller groups of people. And this was something that I realized I could apply to the underrepresented communities in games in other ways. Because though those seeds were already there, being at Xseed kickstarted my thinking into representation and why it matters. And so the lesson that I was able to draw from my time there is how to assess the needs and help people. And really what that means is remember to bring in those that others do not think of often. Though the community may seem small, you can open up a whole new world for people. And truly, that just means bringing more players to your product who will feel authentically represented and grateful, and who will then bring in others. It feeds on itself in the most beautiful and wonderful way. Now, I did mention that Xseed was short, and after it, we come to what I will say is my favorite job in games, Carbine Studios. Now, sadly, Carbine shut down in 2018, or I suspect I would still be there. It is where I drew the next card in my journey, the Wheel of Fortune, which symbolizes change and new growth, as well as a karmic cycle. Carbine was the first time I was able to take everything I had done before and put it into action in one place. And being able to do so helped open up new opportunities and helped me make new connections, like Angie Oakley, Christy Murray, Sarah Delahanty, and Heather Conover, who are to this day some of the most important people in my personal life and my career. Carbine was a very blessed time. I was able to collaborate based on all my previous knowledge, and I really felt like I touched every single aspect of game dev. I owned the VO pipeline. I worked very closely with localization, not only for VO, but for the actual translations. I worked with our tools team and helped make a tool. I worked with our cinematics team. And I really felt like for the first time, I was a part of how all of it got made. I even, again, pulled some lessons in from my time as a stripper on assessing the needs of others and the wants and the desires and seeing how I could help them. But as the wheel says, fortune comes and fortune goes, and it is a karmic cycle. And at Carbine, we had layoffs. But before I left, I was able to draw in a fantastic lesson, which is collaboration is key. Games are not an auteur act. Even if you are making a game by yourself, you are still being supported by others around you who are giving you the space to do so. Collaboration means that we are stronger together and can make greater things when we lean on each other. Now, after the heartbreak of my career ending at Carbine, I had a moment, and I actually tried to get out of the industry, and I couldn't. And so came the next card in my journey, the Hanged Man. Now, the Hanged Man symbolizes personal sacrifice and wisdom. And I feel like this one was more of a warning in some ways, not to fall into old traps or be complacent. All that time I spent not getting a job in a field, to me, felt like the universe was telling me I had to sacrifice the idea that just any job would do. Inside, I knew I truly wanted to work in games, and I eventually told myself that I should trust that things will work out. And they did. A connection came through. Albert Cow, from my time at Snail, and this is going to be a theme, needed an editor that he could trust. And so I went to Aniplex of America and was very surprised to see that the North American branch of the biggest anime company in the world was incredibly tiny. However, they were able to output an enormous amount of work. And it really put into perspective, because at larger studios, we do this, it put into perspective that sometimes throwing more people at a problem is not the answer. Sometimes it's useful to see how things can be done better, because we can all make more efficient processes. Now, I want to take a moment to say something very important, which is that I do not in any way whatsoever support crunch or overwork. I always try and find ways to accomplish the tasks at hand without considering either of those as an option. And I would challenge you all to do the same, because the moment you consider it, even in a far-off realm, you manifest that, and it becomes a reality. and I refuse to manifest crunch for myself and others. The great lesson that I learned at Aniplex of America was challenge yourself to be efficient, but without sacrifice. We can all find ways to do work better without it affecting our personal lives. The hanged man is a warning, and truly, if you look out for it, you can avoid it. When I worked at Aniplex, I was a full-time employee, and they gave me absolutely no reason to move on elsewhere. But I was only there for a year, and I did leave. And it was for the one thing in my entire career that I had always, always wanted. And I mean, I had applied here maybe 8 times and got rejected. And that thing was to work at Blizzard Entertainment. And so we go to the next card in my journey, which is death. Now, people make a lot of mistakes when it comes to this card. It is actually one of the best cards in the deck. Death symbolizes a necessary ending so that a new beginning can come about. And a needed ending that I had to learn was never idolize a studio. I left a full-time position for a temp position, and actually, it was not even working in games. It was on the creative development team as a publishing editor. And I was helped there by a connection named Siege Gary, who is truly an editing icon of mine. I have so much respect for them. They are somebody that I met through my partner years ago. Remember how we came to California? Yeah, that was for him to work at Blizzard. Though, by the time I got there, he was long gone. And I cannot tell you how excited I was to start at Blizzard. Again, this has been my dream for the entirety of my time in games. I was also incredibly excited to learn something new, because publishing is very, very different from games. Like, we think that we are beholden to deadlines in games. Let me tell you that we are not. We push our deadlines all the time. Committing to and completing work is much more important when you're in the publishing industry. And if you delay work, it affects downstream teams and people, which is something that I experienced firsthand in horrible, horrible ways. Like, there was somebody that was above me that was allowed to push their deadlines, but all mine still stayed the same. I just had less time to complete them. And in publishing, you must have things ready for a set date if you want a book to come out. A little side note on something else I had experienced and honestly forgotten could happen, considering how blessed a time all the connections I've had. I experienced something that I call the only woman syndrome. Now, I have been games for a hot minute, and I also understand how being the only different person can make you distinctive, and that there is a certain urge within us to make it stay that way because it feels like it keeps you safe. But I do have great empathy for that situation. However, I'd like to hearken back to everything that I'd learned from that point. We are stronger together because there is room for us all. I did get to meet many fine people like Avalon Irons, Bridget O'Neill, Maddie Buckingham, and I also got to get closer to my editing icon, Siege. And truly, the lesson here was commit to your promises or deadlines. Sometimes we want to push things because they will not be ready in time. But I am here to say that sometimes it is better to commit to your timeline because it will help you shape what is to come far easier. In narrative, I believe that there is value in having your endpoint done first so that you can scope out your story appropriately. Also, this helps you support your downstream teams much, much better, especially since they are going to be the ones who will be the most effective if you push your dates. Now, again, death. I was a temp at Blizz, and unfortunately, it was around the time that they had their layoff of 800 people. It was a time in the industry. So I had to find a new job, and something came up. A contract at Activision headquarters. I was very leery to take it, but I really, really needed the work. And also, my very first lesson, opportunity. And so the next card in my journey is temperance, which symbolizes patience and balance and avoiding extremes in order to achieve success. As I've said before, I like to be honest, and I will honestly say that working on the top floor of Activision headquarters was probably one of the darkest experiences that I've come across, one of the darkest places for sure. But the job that I did with the team there taught me many great things. I was part of the Call of Duty marketing team, and I will say that those are some of the hardest working people ever. It is yet again an example of a shockingly small team, because when you think Call of Duty, you would think that they would have more than, 5 people. It is a small team doing very impactful things, and it is everybody supporting one another. I believe that marketing is incredibly valuable in getting your game seen and helping you make the money you need so that you can make more games. In my time in AAA, I have seen so much antagonism to marketing. And it really makes me sad because our marketing people are our friends and they can help us. And they do something that we don't to an expert degree, and that is personal storytelling. I want you to think about it. Marketing engages with players on a very deep and fundamental level. And indeed, they sell fantasy. That is how they encourage a player to buy the game. The storytelling that they do is personal and unique. And honestly, this kind of storytelling is something valuable to bring into the development of a game itself. And it has helped me make more engaging stories. And so the lesson that I drew from my time at Activision was Other disciplines make you stronger. Everything is connected. Learning how others do your discipline, especially storytelling, will help you do your job better. Now, as I said, Activision was a dark place. And it actually was the very first place that I ever left with no plan in mind. Until that point, I had never left a job without having another job, unless it was a layoff. But this time, I needed to go, and I did something. I told the universe that I trusted it, and I knew that it would provide. And it did. And this is where you learn that I am a little bit bad at learning my own lessons. I got a great opportunity to work at Blizzard Entertainment. But this time, it was on the Diablo 4 team as a full-time employee. I was thrilled. But what is Diablo? The devil, of course. And in tarot, the devil symbolizes feelings of being trapped and stuck in a terrible situation. But the silver lining is you can walk away at any time. Diablo was an IP that was close to my heart, and I thought this time things would be different. I was on a game team, it was full-time, things would be 100% different. I am not going to say much about my time on Diablo 4, but I will say that it reinforced some previous learnings I had had. And I really met some of the most bravest and empowering people on that team. People like Bridget Collins, Lee Bryant, Danielle Corporon, and Amy Liu. It reinforced that the good people will help you through no matter what. And it also brought to light a new point, that though the good are strong together, occasionally they are outweighed by the bad. And ultimately, the greatest lesson I learned was a new one, and a personal one. Perseverance in the face of adversity. Remember, you know yourself and what you stand for. This actually applies to narrative quite a bit. People will tell you how to change your story, and though it is always good for you to listen to the needs of others, you do know when it is right to change or not. Do not let anyone gaslight you into thinking otherwise or into trying to take your truth away. You know who you are. And the good ones, they'll always be there to help you remember that. Now, my next card, again, very, very bad at learning lessons, apparently. Didn't actually have me leave Blizzard, but it did have me transfer teams away from Diablo 4. And the next card in my journey is the Star, the sweet ingenue of the major arcana. The Star symbolizes fresh starts and innocent hope. After being on Diablo 4, I will say that I was damaged in my soul. I was honestly not sure if I could trust anything at Blizzard. But silver linings, I walked away, and it helped me build good boundaries. And I definitely learned what abuse looked like, so there we go. WoW was healing. It was the place that, at my point in games, I worked with the most underrepresented genders I ever had at a game studio. The team was incredibly diverse that way. I also got the chance to spread my wings, and they treated me coming on the team like a new beginning. The WoW team valued the experience I brought and let me take on challenges that I always knew I could complete, but never really had the opportunity to do so truly. Challenges like helping hire and manage our interns. I got the chance to collaborate with new people and forge new connections. And truly, I got clarity into the path I truly wanted to take. And I will be forever grateful for my time on the World of Warcraft team and the support of everyone there. And the lesson that I learned while there was, leave yourself open to the good. Too many times when bad things happen to us, we want to paint our new experiences with the same colors as the old. But that is unfair. We should give a new experience the initial chance to be delighted. And if old patterns arise, you'll recognize them. So, hearing about how I felt about WoW, it's probably hard to imagine I left. However, let's go back to my very first lesson, opportunity. That came in the form of me realizing on the WoW team that the path I wanted to take was to be a lead and use everything that I had learned to help others. Mentoring truly put that in perspective for me. And so I looked around and saw that Crystal Dynamics had opened a lead narrative position. And I actually saw this through a connection I made at that game dev gathering I mentioned all that time ago. It was Ms. Nicole Martinez, who at the time when I met her was a student, but was now a narrative director. And I would love to take a moment to say she is an amazing human being. I am blessed for having met her. She's an incredible narrative, writer, everything person. And I'm so glad that I saw on Twitter that she posted this job. Though, when I applied, I did it thinking that they would never want me. But at least it would be the opportunity I could get, maybe, to practice my interview skills for the thing that I wanted. So I sent my resume in, and I heard back within an hour from the recruiter to set up an interview with them. From there, it was a week till my interview with both the narrative directors, and then another week until my panel interview. I had my last interview on a Friday and then heard back on Monday that they wanted to get me. I was stunned. I had done this for practice, and I got the job. Of course, I had to take the opportunity. And that brings me to my last and final card, and actually the final card in the major arcana. The world, which symbolizes mastery over one journey and the start of another. And truly, there's a lesson to be had here as well. And that is, endings are just truly new beginnings. And so, in my new phase as being a lead, this phase of my career, I try to practice many of the lessons that came before so that I can always be someone that my individual contributors can trust for support, encouragement, and learning. This is what I truly believe the job is as a lead. I think being a lead is a service position where we help others achieve their best potential by empowering them. And so here are my final thoughts. How does this relate to everything? Well, my whole journey was supported by connections who empowered me at every step. Each new place taught me something new about game development, but also game narrative on a whole. I saw that we can always bring our lessons that we learned into our spaces. It taught me that we should always be open to new opportunities, both in myself and others. That we are stronger together, and truly, that differing perspectives are beautiful. And all these things are important to remember when you build a team. And truly, these are the tenets on which I seek to build teams. Because at the end of the day, making a strong, diverse team is easy. Just be open to the opportunity of empowering others. And so, I will close out how I always do for a reading. I hope that this was helpful and that something resonated with you. And if not, I hope you were at least entertained. Thank you.
Thank you, Diandra. You have set the standard extremely high for content this year, and it has been an absolute privilege to have had you share your journey and insights with us today. I'm sure you're all very eager to head out into the rest of the conference, so I won't keep you too long. However, we will be having our networking icebreaker led by leadership consultant Lex Dwyer just outside the plenary in about 10 minutes. We've brought morning tea down here to the event so that you're refreshed and ready to network, but we just ask that you don't take your drinks into the networking event with you. So please go grab a bicky and a coffee, and we'll see you there. Thank you very much.